President Trump may have been a guest at the new NATO headquarters in Brussels today, but during his opening remarks, he came out swinging against other members, calling them out for not paying their fair share towards the international organization, which protects all of them.
Very, very direct with Secretary Stoltenberg and members of the alliance in saying that NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations.
That should not be a shock to anybody, but wait till you see how other members of the NATO group there took the scolding, and will his direct approach finally lead to changes? Let's bring in somebody now who worked directly with our NATO allies, former U.S. Ambassador to NATO and former Undersecretary of State, Ambassador Nicholas Burns. Ambassador, I want to first show the reaction to that. It appeared that some of the members were either smirking or snickering or laughing because there was video. I think they looked so surprised and so shocked. But the point is that they are not holding their end of the deal up. Look, I mean, he's shaming them, but they've got to pay 2% of their GDP. Did he do something wrong by simply calling out the rules?
Well, I think that President Trump has been right to say that the NATO allies need to do more. The United States does its fair share, so we have a right to ask these allies to pay more. But you also want to be effective. And I think most of us have learned from diplomacy, if you try to shame another leader in public, it's probably going to backfire on you. And this was a memorial. This service that he spoke at was a memorial to 9/11, to the Manchester bombings. It was really the wrong place and the wrong tone. I think it would have been better if President Trump had dinner this evening in Brussels. They had dinner privately. If he had done it there, because he's made this point publicly. So he's right on the merits of the issue, but this is not the way to deal. It's not the way to be effective and get the deal that he wants to get. I think that was a mistake that he made today.
Well, years have gone by where people showed politesse, and they showed, oh, well, let's keep it quiet and not out there in the front pages, etc. The pussyfooting around is not working. Because we can show you the numbers, and you know these as well, but our viewers might not. The U.S. pays more than 2% of its GDP to the NATO alliance here. 3.61% of our GDP is what we put in. But then you look at Germany. Germany only pays about 1.2%. France is better than Germany, 1.8%. And then the U.K. is slightly higher than 2% at 2.17%. But only 5 out of 28 nations are meeting the goal of paying in 2% of GDP. You know, what hasn't been working year after year needs to be thrown in the can, and then he's got to come out and at least do something different.
Well, he's exactly right on the merits of the issue. In fact, since Putin's invasion of Crimea and eastern Ukraine 3 years ago, 20 of those 29 allies have increased defense spending. So they did it in response to Putin. I think President Trump should stay with this, but do it in an effective way. And what he didn't say today, what President Trump did not say today, is that he would reaffirm the U.S. Article 5 commitment to the security of the NATO allies. And I was President Bush's ambassador on 9/11. I remember when we were hit, all those European allies came to our defense. They've all gone into Afghanistan. They're all still there fighting with our soldiers. They're fighting in West Africa, and they're fighting in the Middle East. So the Europeans are doing a lot for us. We have to recognize that. We have to push them to do more in defense spending. But the president needs to be the leader of this alliance. He needs to reaffirm our support, and he needs to be tougher on Russia. He wasn't tough on
absolutely.
Putin today.
Nobody's arguing with that.
He isn't standing up.
Nobody here is arguing with that.
For the European allies on Russia.
Okay, but let me also say that the United Nations has been pretty toothless on a lot of efforts and issues. And so he is calling for a cut in money there for about $1 billion in funding for, I believe, the UN peacekeeping funding. His whole mission here is about peace. There is the question of how you manage to pull that off if you are cutting money from peacekeeping missions. But, you know, a lot of Americans are saying, we don't need NATO peacekeepers on the ground. We don't need UN peacekeepers on the ground. Everybody else does. So for us to be the one shouldering it is a problem.
The public opinion polls in the United States show clear American public support for NATO. It makes sense for us to be supportive of an alliance. Ronald Reagan supported it. Dwight D. Eisenhower. All of our presidents have. And President Trump has been, frankly, the weakest American president since Harry Truman on NATO. That's the problem.
I understand. And it appears he's softened his tone slightly. He tends to do that. So we shall watch and see. But I just think that he got people's attention. And maybe it was an inappropriate time for, certainly at a 9/11 memorial, but what they've been doing hasn't been working to get people to step up. But I hear you, Ambassador. Thank you very much for joining us.
But you do want to be effective, too. Thank you.
Always, always. Ambassador Nicholas Burns, former U.S. ambassador to NATO. And